Welcome, everyone, to our event today. It should be a great call, and we thank you for taking the time out of your day to attend with us. Now, there are a couple of things you need to know for the event today. There is a chat box open. It should be on the right-hand side of the visual here. If you don't see it in the upper right-hand corner, you should see an option to click to view chat. Now, before you do that, make sure that you open up your browser window full screen. You're going to want it full screen so you can see the visual as well as chat at the same time. You're welcome to put questions and comments in there today. Now, at the end of the event, you can get signed up for your immediate access. It'll be a button right down below, but wait, don't go there yet. If you go there now, you will miss the live stream. You won't have the access to this, so be sure to wait until the end of the event. But again, the button will be just down below. Now, we do have an upcoming training this Tuesday that you'll get invited to once you unlock the access. So again, be sure that you do that after the call. Now, before I hand off to our host today, I would like to welcome in someone who's been doing this process for a few months now to share some of his feedback and experience with us. So first off, I'd like to welcome in Dan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dan Covell, a managing partner with CG Mineta Consulting and team leader at Stride. I've been a financial advisor now for over 22 years, and I've never seen an opportunity quite like this. Stride and underpayments are an absolute game changer. When I started months ago promoting underpayments, I had zero contacts in the healthcare industry. Fast forward to today, and I've met with and I'm in the process of closing 23 hospitals and medical facilities, have 33 more in a pipeline scheduled, and more importantly, have 62 strategic partnerships, which translates to over 150 agents actively promoting my services. In fact, underpayments has allowed a much easier path to healthcare C-suite executives and provides an opportunity to cross-sell services and scale at a level that my firm has never seen before. And it's not difficult. This is an opportunity of a lifetime like none other. So good luck to you.
Thank you so much, Dan, for sharing your feedback with us. Now, I would like to welcome in the host of today's call, partner here with Stride, Jason Ziccarelli.
Hello, everyone. Very pleased to have you with us today. Welcome to today's call. We're going to talk about medical underpayments. Now, I know you've been hearing tons and tons of information about this, right? Lots of solicitive language. This is the newest gold rush. It's the biggest opportunity of your lives, right? This is the chance to make $100,000, $1 million, maybe even $10 million or more in a single transaction. And while that's all exciting, and I'm sure there's a degree of doubt in your heads when you hear about an opportunity such as this, I'm here to walk you through the exact hows and whys relative to these opportunities and validate everything that you've heard that warranted your confidence and at least your interest in jumping on this call. Before I do it, though, I think it's important to kind of give you guys the background, right? How we got to this stage, what led us here, what got us to this point, this state of extreme need that kind of afforded us the opportunity to take a look at this space and say, you know what, we can do something about it. There's a hole here, there's a niche, there's something that can be filled. And we as an entity, as an organization, ownership here, and our amazing people that we have on our staff that come together and say, listen, with this opportunity and with who we are and what we do and what we've been doing for decades, we're positioned to do something about this, to capitalize upon this, and to give each and every one of you the opportunity to capitalize on this. So to do this, we've got to jump in our way back machine, right? We've got to go back to, say, 1950, really at the origin, the genesis of the health insurance industry, because at the core of all of this are the bad guys that are the health insurance industry. Now, I know that's kind of a bold statement, right? We're outright calling out an entire industry. I just villainized an entire industry. But come on, be honest with yourselves. Who on this call doesn't hate the health insurance industry? If you're a medical professional or if you're a consumer, nobody's having a great time dealing with these folks. If you're being honest with yourself, you and I both know that's all of our reality. So let's step back and look at how the industry came into being. The industry came into being because, well, as a side effect of folks coming back, right, from the World War II, overcoming the era, the Depression era. We go into World War II, economy booms, people come back from the war. Folks are pretty happy to see one another. And we have this little environment called the baby boom. And the byproduct of that is we have more people born and being born than at any time in our country's history. We're also seeing an increase in longevity at that point. People are living longer and longer. The byproduct of this is that there's more and more demand for medical services. However, these medical services are still expensive. And so some very intelligent, very capable, and very opportunistic people stepped up and said, well, if we aggregate a lot of bodies and put them all together, we can charge some money to then offset costs for these people when they go in and they have a medical need, right? We can aggregate these funds and we can pay for things and we can drive down the overall cost by aggregating these bodies. And they started putting together the earliest stages of health insurance. Pretty primitive stuff initially, but with time and with experience, and again, a great deal of intelligence, these products improved over time. They covered more and more stuff. They became better and better. And they became really kind of a hallmark and a foundation for what many people relied upon economically, should they encounter some form of medical need. So as time progresses, as we go from the 50s into the 60s and so on and so forth, they create products to accommodate the demand, the need in the market space. If you have a little bit of need, you pay a little bit of money. If you have a lot of need, you pay a lot more money. And with a lot of levels in between. And the system worked exactly how it should. It was a great market, a great system, great series of products, did exactly what it should do. However, as always happens, over time, as the market grew and grew, and the original founders got bigger and bigger and more powerful and took in more and more money, and our population was growing and growing and growing. It's booming and more wealth coming in, and we're going through a very prosperous stage in our country's history, and more children are being born. There's more and more medical need. And because there's more and more medical need, there's more and more money piling into the system. With money comes opportunity. And with a lot of money comes a lot of opportunity. Opportunity, when we look at our political system, as it exists in this country and as it's evolved, especially these last 50 years, those opportunistic people with their power, sometimes, and very unfortunately, they combine with other opportunistic people that have money. And then influence starts kicking in. And a lot of times there's a negative side effect. The negative side effect here was that the politicians, right, by proxy, these big moneyed up insurance companies solicit the politicians. They reach out to the politicians, and ultimately they start getting in bed with one another. And they start strategizing. And they say, listen, we should embed a certain level of need and a certain level of coverage in every policy, whether it's needed or not. In other words, don't let the market drive what's in a policy and what the different thresholds are and what the different markets are. Instead, start forcing product in. And you might ask yourself, well, why would an insurance company want to do that? Why would they want to see legislation and pressure pushed into their space to mandate what they offer within the various strata of their policies when nobody knows better than they do? They've got the actuaries. They've got 10 and 20 and 30 years of experience. They're the ones that know this space. So why, oh, why would they tolerate politicians and political pressure influencing what they offer and how they offer it and how they price it? Good question. The reason they tolerated it, or at least the guys at the top tolerated it, is because this little thing called adverse selection, right? If I've got one of these de minimis policies, I pay a little bit of money for a little bit of coverage, right? Or I pay a little bit of money for catastrophic coverage. And if we have a lot of people doing that, we can keep that price down because only a few people out of a population ever actually encounter these catastrophic situations, right? Perfect policy. But what happens now if we start forcing into this minimal level of coverage, this very specific level of coverage for a series of other things? And it's political pressure and or outright mandate that forces that. Well, if I'm a smaller up-and-comer nipping at the heels of a larger entity, it's hard for me to do that because I don't have the population to absorb it. I'm going to take on this thing that's called adverse selection. In other words, everybody that needs it is going to flock to me because I'm at that cheapest level, and now they can get the coverage they know they're going to use. Key point. They know they're going to use. They know that they need for a price that isn't commensurate with the actual cost of the procedure, the actual cost of the coverage. What is the byproduct? The little guys go out of business. The little guys can't compete. All the clients, all the attention, all the opportunity they drove, that now flows upstream to these larger companies. And once the game worked once, all bets were off. And it happened again and again and again. And next thing you know, you see these juggernaut companies that just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, creating this almost monopoly or monopolistic type. There we are. Let's get the tongue to keep up with the brain, right, guys? This monopolistic type environment whereby there can be no new guys. There can be no up-and-comers. There's the big ones, and that's it. They own the environment. So over a decade ago, we have this little thing called the Affordable Care Act. You guys probably remembered it was lovingly called Obamacare. And at the time, one of the things that were done to placate the populace, to tell everybody, hey, listen, this is going to work out okay. Because on one side, you said, you had a population that said, we absolutely need this. We need this for the citizens. We need this for the destitute. This is going to be a mechanism by which we save people a great deal of money. But then on the other side, we said, well, wait a minute. Governmental healthcare, this is a problem. This is socialism. It doesn't work. The government's not great at controlling expenses and managing a great deal of things. And so very intelligently, the administration brought forward large insurers like Blue Cross Blue Shield, who stood up and said, no, this is a good thing. This is not the governmental takeover of healthcare. Healthcare is still going to be a public product, right? And people ask themselves, well, okay, how can that be? How can it be that Blue Cross Blue Shield, as an example, yes, we're calling them out, we're picking on them. Oh, well. How can it be that they're standing behind this if it's truly a bad thing? Now, there were many of us in the know that said, well, listen, this is all just nonsense. But the average person whose space this is not didn't recognize the implications of what was going on here. And if you're tracking with me to this point, you understand the story and the narrative that I'm telling you, the history that I'm giving you of the industry up to this point, you're already getting ahead of me, aren't you? Right? You're getting it. You're going, haha, I see what they did. I understand why they said that. Exactly. Because when you mandate healthcare, when you're going to make this shift, all you're doing, especially when you're in bed with the very politicians, how do you know they're in bed? Because they stood up and spoke against logic. They stood up and spoke against their own industry. That's how you know they're in bed with each other. That's why I'm comfortable calling them out now, right? So when they stood up and said this, you have to recognize the reason they said this is because they were eliminating competition. They were eliminating the environment whereby any new up-and-comers were going to be able to compete with them. And even though they have a massive market share with today's technology, the reality is that little companies, people with great ideas, they can get financial backing and they can come up and they can, in fact, nip at the heels of giants. David is toppling Goliath all the time anymore. You guys recognize that. You see it in every market space. And they knew it could happen here. They knew the game that they've been playing for 50 years. It had its end. There was a light at the end of the tunnel, and they weren't going to be able to keep doing it if they didn't participate in this maneuver. And so they did. And they came out and they told all of us how good this was going to be. But what's the byproduct yet again? By doing that, they're taking on more and more money. They have volumes of the populace that now are being forced into buying insurance. You guys all recognize this, right? The attack dog of the IRS comes after you, charges a fine if you don't buy insurance. This is a way to force new bodies into the market. Bodies, millennials, by the way, and since then, Gen Zers that don't want to participate in this stuff. And in fact, the little experiment hasn't worked out perfectly because there's plenty of people out there today willing to pay the fine instead of buying the insurance. But that wasn't the case with everybody. And it did, in fact, drive up participation while squeezing out the smaller entities. And of course, when you participate in the game, you're rewarded on an ongoing basis. Now, there's a problem here. And the problem comes in from two sides. The reality from the consumer side, well, let me stop instead of telling you what your reality is, and you tell me. When was the last time since the introduction of the Affordable Care Act that your premiums actually went down? Anybody? Hasn't for me. I don't assume that it has for either one of you. In fact, what we see instead is that 20% of Americans still to this day have no coverage whatsoever. That's a pretty intriguing number when we consider what the number was prior to the advent of the Affordable Care Act. In fact, that number is going up every single year. Now let's take a look at the percentage of Americans on high deductible plans. High deductible plans are plans that wherein, mathematically speaking, you're spending at least $1,500 out of your pocket before your insurance kicks in. That number today is 65% of Americans are on a high deductible plan. Well, you guys all understand deductions, right? Why are you on a high deductible plan? Well, you're on one because it drives your premiums down. Why do you want to drive your premiums down? Because they keep going up. Because this grand experiment and all the promises behind the Affordable Care Act turned out not to be true. It didn't save you money. It didn't drive down cost. It didn't then continue to drive down cost. It's the antithesis of that. It's the exact opposite. Money's costs have escalated each year, year over year. That's demonstrated in your pocketbook. It's demonstrated in statistics. We all recognize it. We all see it. In fact, the average deductible for Americans today is $2,004 for an individual. The average family is over $12,000. It's crippling. What are you going to do about it, though? All the power is in the hands of the politicians and the big, giant insurers that have got the politicians in their back pocket. There's not a damn thing you're going to do about it. Nothing. Nothing at all. And in fact, we look at the level of participation in high deductible plans over the last 10 years, they've increased by 85%. 85%. It's not a small number. So this now, as we get into what are underpayments, what are we doing? We are saving the very medical institutions that we as individuals so desperately need. We as a nation, and I'm only covering one side of it now, I'm going to come back and give you the rest of the history lesson as we talk about the other side. We as a nation cannot afford for the incredible decline that we're seeing in our medical institutions. We are seeing a fallout, a glut, a shortage since the Affordable Care Act of over 30 million primary care professionals. See, our medical system in this country is designed as a pyramid, right? Just like this. Across the bottom, the widest point, that's the intake. That's the intake system. It's the primary care professionals. However, due to the Affordable Care Act and what's been implemented, the number of people that don't have insurance or have to go out of pocket for the first $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, as I said, an average of $12,000 for a family. They're going to see doctors less if they can. They're skipping out on their bills. That's making life way less profitable for these folks. In addition to that, what did the Affordable Care Act do to these medical institutions? Well, let's see. What do they do? For Medicare, our older populations, there used to be a 3% annual step up, kind of like an inflationary adjustment. Oh, that went away. Our billing cycles that were 30 and 60 days turned into 90 and 120 days. Then in addition to that, the Affordable Care Act placed the burden of an additional 191 million hours of paperwork on these institutions. Of course, not per institution, but spread out across all of them. But I ask you, when was the last time that whatever you did to make money, you added hours and hours and hours of burden to that, paperwork to that, and that paperwork resulted in more revenue? It didn't. Of course, that's more cost. So you have higher cost, you have less visits, you have stretched out and protracted revenue cycles, you have additional burden placed upon you, all of this. And you ask yourself, is it still worth it to be a primary care professional? I can tell you through other arms, other divisions of our company, we work with medical professionals, for example, for our proprietary retirement program. And I will tell you, post-Affordable Care Act, volumes of these doctors are no longer doctors. Maybe some of them have re-educated themselves and they've gone to become specialists and they've still stayed in the medical field, but many others have moved on. In fact, I can point to volumes of them that own fast food chains, that have moved into other industries, that have come and started offering our products and services because they make more money in a week, in a month, in a year than they ever made in their career as doctors. While that's exciting for us as an organization, and I hope it's exciting for each and every one of you, right? Because you have the same opportunity. It's horrifying for us as a nation, as a people. A new statistic just came out that said Americans, here's where the half comes in, Americans will now spend half of their lives taking medication. Well, medication doesn't fall out of the air. You have to go to a doctor. You have to figure out what's wrong with you. You have to be prescribed a medication. What happens when there's no doctors to go to? What happens? What happens as our doctor's offices consolidate, and we leave these pockets, these deserts all over the country where there's no medical care? What happens when you have an emergency and that facility that was 15 minutes down the road is now an hour and a half away? Are you going to get there? Is your child going to get there? These are real issues. These are issues actually facing our nation. So this is what insurance has done to cripple the medical institutions on the patient payer side. But now there's another side, right? There's the other side of things. So when a hospital, when a medical facility works with you and you've got health insurance, there's payer responsibility on the participant side and your side. But then there's payer responsibility. There's two types of payers. There's insurance companies. There's responsibility on their side. There's what they have to cover. These medical institutions, they all have contracts with each and every insurance provider. And the contracts cover all the minutia, right? This, then that, every third Thursday we pay in this fashion. I'm being funny, but only so much. They have the guidelines by which these medical institutions provide you the medical services you so desperately need, with the understanding that this is what they're going to get paid to do it, and they build their business around it. However, if we step back and we look at the way the process works, and what I'm telling you now, yes, I recognize I'm the owner of the company. I can tell you whatever I want in a very self-serving fashion. I would put to you, and you're going to see as you come to work with our organization. And listen, if you already know what I'm talking about and you don't want to sit here through the rest of my presentation, look right now, look right down below me. You can activate, you can get engaged, you can become a participant, a member of our organization right now. Go right ahead and do that. Click right through and do it. But if you still want to understand the ins and outs of what's going on, hang with me just a little bit longer. So again, as we step back and we look at the other side of revenue for these medical institutions, they build themselves based around their historical procedures. What do we do? Right? What do we do? What are our activities? And this is how they build their structures, renovate their structures, make payroll, all of the different things. They build their entire business model around it, with the confidence that these multi-billion-dollar, and let's be honest, this multi-trillion-dollar industry, these hugest of big names that exist, and the contracts ironclad contracts they have in hand that they're going to be honored. The reality is, guys, they're not honored. They're not honored all the time. And so when you're a big insurer who has had the government in their back pocket for 50 years, who participated in the game that was the Affordable Care Act, and is now sitting at the top of the heap in the most lucrative and powerful industry in the world, you know you can get away with some gamesmanship. And that's exactly what they do all day, every day. Some examples of what they do when it comes to paying the bills that the hospitals, the surgical centers, the urgent care facilities, the primary care practices, the stuff you guys are in every single day. In fact, I'm going to pause for a second and ask you to just think back in your life for the last 365 days, the last year. Have you, somebody you know, a loved family person, not been to the doctor, not been to an urgent care facility, God forbid, not been to the hospital? Have you not relied upon these services to maintain you or, God forbid, save you or somebody you love? Yeah, you know about this stuff. You know how important these folks are. And you know the steady flow, if you've ever sat in an emergency room, you know the steady flow of activity that sits in these facilities and how critical it is that they get the revenue that they rely upon. So let's talk about this reliance in the non-delivery. What I mean when I talk about reliance and non-delivery is these large institutions have the money, they have the wherewithal, they have the insulation, the protection to know that they can play games and get away with it. They also have the money, they have the revenue forced to them by virtue of these laws and this legislation, this gamesmanship, to then invest in technology and strategies and mechanisms to hide their games, to hide their nonsense. Now, some of it is hyper primitive. For example, within these institutions, they'll say, we'll deny these medical claims A, B, C, and D 3 times before you pay, 5 times, 7 times, whatever the number might be. You might ask yourself, well, why would they just flat out deny them? Well, it's easy. These medical practices are so overwhelmed with servicing clients, so overwhelmed with chasing their money, so overwhelmed with keeping their head right above water, with staying in the black. And none of them are, by the way. None of them are. That they don't have time to keep going back and fighting and fighting and fighting every damn invoice. They just don't. And so things start slipping through the cracks. And when you make somebody submit something and then come back and defend it once, you're going to lose 2 or 3% of those people. They're just not going to try again. A second time, another 7 or 8%. A third time, another 10 or 12%. Well, at this point, we've just saved them or saved ourselves, putting ourselves in the position of these payers, of these big insurers. We've just saved ourselves 20%. That's a huge number, isn't it? What about tech glitches? Medicare, for example, comes right out and says, yep, we know there's glitches in our tech. We know we underpay at least about 5% of the time. That's an outright admission of a governmental structure, but administered by the Blues and so on and so forth, all these other entities. Now add to that the gamesmanship, right, of just the simple primitive denial methodology I described. I'm flat out convinced I can demonstrate to each and every one of you that we can show you that they even build into their tech. Because when you run a batch of bills and when you look at this and you can identify a pattern again and again and again, every 17th time this billing code is underpaid by exactly this amount, it's hard to call that a glitch as much as it appears to be a strategy. This and so much more is perpetrated on a minute-to-minute basis against the very medical institutions you and I rely on every single day. Every single day. Now, let's talk about one more byproduct of this. If you're not worked up enough at this point, I'm going to get you upset now. If you're a medical institution who's in the red, who's doing everything you can, all this consolidation, and if you step back and think about it for a minute, how does consolidation help? Well, if I've got an office over here that's laden with staff, and I have an office over here that's laden with staff, and I can take technology and pull them together and keep the revenue and cut the staff in half, well, now I've just increased my profitability. This, I hope now you understand why you're seeing so many buyouts, why you're seeing so much consolidation in this space over this last decade plus since the implementation of the Affordable Care Act, right? It's a method towards salvation. That's all it is. It's not, can we go out there and just become unbelievably wealthy doing what we do? Guys, I'm in front of hospitals every single day of my life, and there is not a single one I've seen that's not bleeding money right now. And that should be horrifying for all of us. Absolutely horrifying. Because again, when they fail, and they are all failing, multi-billion dollar, I was in an institution 2 days ago, multi-billion dollar institution in the red by $25 million in the last year. How, you ask yourself, how is that possible? It's very easily. If your payers aren't paying you and the members, right, your patients can't pay you because they're broke, can't pay you because the average family, maybe a husband and wife. I just talked to a CEO yesterday and said, for God's sakes, we have a husband and wife team that are an attorney and a CPA that just applied for assistance to pay their bill, to get past their deductible. How many of you on here are a power team of an attorney and a CPA having that level of revenue in your home, and yet you still can't pay your bill? If you can't, if they can't, then the average person can't. And so what is the byproduct? The byproduct is if these medical institutions can't put up a fight against the giants, and they can't, I don't care if you're a 1.2, a 4, a $10 billion medical institution, you're still not winning the fight against a multi-trillion-dollar industry with political ties. You're just not, right? We all get that. But here's the flip side. So if you're losing that fight as a medical institution, what fight can you win? The one against you guys, the ones against me, right? You can raise the prices more and more and more so that they can pull more and more money from you and me. When we don't pay, what do? Do they walk away the way they're forced to walk away from these large payers? They sell your account to an accounts receivable company who's going to chase you into your grave, who's going to threaten legal action, who's going to threaten destroying your credit. So guys, it's really, really, really important that you understand the background so that not only you have a level of appreciation for who we are and what we do as I start walking you through the mechanics of what we're able to do, but you understand that there's more to it than just the revenue that you can create for yourself, right? This is the maintenance of our medical system. This is the maintenance of our independence. The byproduct of our medical system collapsing is our government flat out taking over medicine. And we've all seen how well that works in Canada, how well it works around the world. That would be horrifying. As bad as it is here in this country, the rest of the world still desires to deliver the level and quality of medical attention that we get here today. As bad as we don't like it, as frustrated as we are, as far as it's fallen, it's still the best on the planet. We as a people cannot afford for it to go back any further. We as a people are the sickest people in any first world nation in the world. Think about that for a moment, right? Other first world nations have life expectancies as high as 88 years. We capped out at 78. We've declined to 76, and we continue to decline as a nation. As I said minutes ago, new studies came out that said the average American will spend 50% of their life taking medication because of, obviously, medical problems. We cannot have our medical system fail. We just can't. So what do we do? What do we do about this? Who are we here at Stride via our underpayment platform? Who are we and what do we do? It's very simple. Let me describe the process. We come into a medical institution and you all have relationships with them. The last thing I want to hear from any one of you, right? Either directly in chat right now as I'm watching the chat stream or in follow-up as you become part of our organization. I don't know. I can't get to. How do I? Guys, we have that covered. First and foremost, every single one of you has a doctor. Every single one of you has family, has friends that have doctors. Every single one of you. Every single one of you within your circle has folks that go to, that know managers, that know owners of urgent care facilities. Every single one of you has the ability to get in touch with a CEO at a hospital. We've been doing this for a long time, very successfully. We've done it with everybody else. We can do it with you too. Do not think for a moment that you don't have access to this stuff. We've got you covered, okay? So what do? You get us on the phone. We give you the mechanisms to do it. You get us on the phone with the CEO or whatever the case may be of a medical institution, and we have a very, very simple dialogue, and we walk them through the following. We are not here to change anything they're doing, right? If we come in and we cause a high level of disruption, a high level of disturbance, right, we're not going to get anywhere. And that's not our goal whatsoever. Getting nowhere? Of course, it's not our goal. We have been a shockingly successful company. We're not going to change that now. No, what we do, we're going to come in after everything they do. They bought software. Great. Keep your software. You have your teams. Fantastic. I'm sure you love your team. If you didn't, you would have already replaced them. We're not here to do that either. You have a third-party consultant. Great. God bless you. Keep your consultant. We're not here to change anything. The reality is all of these institutions are going to work their batches. It's called the revenue cycle. They're going to work it for a window of time. They all have their own protocol. Statistically speaking, 90% are going to work it for, say, 90 days to 120 days. The remaining 10% is going to be, I don't know, something unique. And that's fine. We've got that covered as well. So if you're going to work your revenue cycle for 90 days, and I'm not going to change anything, when am I going to come in? I'm going to come in on the 91st day. I don't want anything to do before that. In other words, when you've gone through everything you can do, all your steps, all your processes, all your software, all your professionals, all your appeals, everything you're going to do, and you say, okay, that's it. I've done what I can. I'm going to walk away now because my attention needs to go to current items, current batches, current billing, current revenue cycle. That's when we come in. Another way to look at it is you threw it in the trash, and I'm going to dig through your trash now to make sure that you didn't leave anything in there of value. That's exactly how you need to look at us, right? We're a stop loss. We're a quality control measure. So you work your batches for 90 days. I come in on day 91. I come in on my dollar, by the way. There is no front end cost. There is no risk to these institutions whatsoever. None whatsoever. Not one red cent. It's all on our dollar. So we come in on that 91st day. We say, give us your files. I'm not going to go into your systems. I'm not altering your contracts. I'm not looking at anything. You're going to send me through my secure link. You're going to send me what's called your 835s. It's your billing paperwork, right? It's going to show me what you did. It's going to show me what you billed for, and it's going to show me what you were paid. And I know you're thinking to yourself, well, if it shows them all that, why can't they find it for themselves? Because there's volumes of games that are played. There's way too much to dig through. They're way too buried, and there's no software outside of ours. And that's a real critical component. There's no software that looks explicitly for underpayments. Now, you may hear that there's other software out there. For example, Cerner software, great piece of software. Epic software, amazing piece of software. And I'm not being facetious or sarcastic when I say that. I mean it. It's great software. Is it better than us? Yup, it's better than us at all the things we don't do. Is it as good as us at the thing we do? No, can't touch us. And every medical institution in the country will tell you that. So what these softwares do is that they're overly general. They come in and they're going to handle your revenue cycle. They're going to handle your contract management. They're going to handle your denials. They're going to do all of this stuff. Well, I'm going to ask you, if I give you something that can go into any type of medical institution, no matter how small, no matter how large, and can do all of these different things, and even within all of these segments of medical, whether it's primary care, urgent care, surgical center, hospitals, whether it's podiatry, it's optometry, whatever it is, well, I think you're kind of seeing where I'm going now, right? It's very general, right? It's amazingly powerful, but it's very general. And anytime you do general work, what you're not doing is precision work. And see, that's what we do. And so we're going to get all your 835s. We're going to get your payer contracts, and we're going to load that into our proprietary software. Now, what our software does, and when I say proprietary, I mean we build it from the ground up, right? It doesn't exist anywhere else. Nobody built it for us. It's not white labeled. It is exclusive in the market space. Kind of our hallmark as a company. When you look at we as an institution, there's nobody that does what we do. We've innovated market after market. We innovate how things are brought to market. We like to, I guess, say cheat, right? We like to cheat. We like to go do what nobody else does. We don't want you, nor do we want to compete on a level playing field. We want to do what nobody else does in a way that nobody else can do it. Makes life easier. It's easier on you. It's easier on us when you can walk in and say, nope, I don't do what everybody else does. I do what nobody else does. And I do it better than anybody else could even try to do it if they want to enter this space. We're able to accomplish this through our proprietary software as one piece of the puzzle. So we upload all this stuff into our software and we run this. It only takes a brief window of time. We're going to have results inside of 48 hours. It's a really quick turnaround for everybody we're working with. Now, what this software does is it tells us where the hotspots are. What I mean when I say hotspots, when we get enough data, we're going to see errors in underpayments across the board in every form of billing code, every single one. But because we're a contingency-based platform, because we're doing all of this on our dollar, we don't have the luxury to go after every single penny. We want to go and see where is the bulk of the activity, where are the bulk of the underpayments. And that's exactly what their software tells us. And believe it or not, no matter what institution we go into, you're going to see an aggregation of underpayments into a finite number of billing codes. There's certain patterns that develop, they show themselves. And this tells us, again, with further refinement, further laser-like focus, where do we need to give our attention to? Based on that information, we now rebuild the software from the ground up, completely rebuilt from the ground up. What does that mean? Your contract terms, all of the minutia, all the if this, then that, blah, 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 that's in the contract. All of your actual medical procedures, all of your billing, all of your payments. In other words, completely custom software to that institution, not applicable to the next hospital down the road, the urgent care facility 20 feet away, the primary care practice that those primary doctors are then moonlighting in the hospital surgery, couldn't apply to any of them. It is just their software. And it's just focusing on the one area, or the limited areas we need to focus on, just looking for one thing. Do you see why now I'm able to comfortably come in and talk to any medical institution, say, don't bail on your software. Don't bail on your other professionals. We're not a threat to anybody. Let them do what they do. We're still going to come behind them and find what they can't find. That shouldn't be threatening. This is just another arrow in your quiver, right? That's who we are. That's what we do. Now, we go through and we run this software, right? And in running the software, we're able to identify where the problem areas are. And then we go through and we perfect the process and we start getting that medical institution paid a little bit here, a little bit there to perfect our process and refine everything yet further. Part of our secret sauce is on the human side of things as well. It's not just that we have this amazing software unlike anything else in the industry. It's not enough that we go to the next level and we build custom software after that. We go a step further. And now where the humans step in and we go after the payers. They used to work for the payers. In fact, we won't hire anybody that hasn't worked in a management capacity. The very people that strategize and pull these games against the medical facilities, right? We talk about the dark side and the good side. We take them back from the dark side. Again, in an event I was speaking at very, very recently, we had a CEO of a hospital, 17th hospital she was at, and she called them the devil. And I joked at the event that we baptize them, right? We get them away from the devil and we put them on the good side. And they know the games, they know the language, they know the tricks, and they have this groundbreaking, innovative software in their back pocket to use to then go get our facilities paid. And we go through and we perfect the process and we get the revenue flowing. By the way, we get the revenue flowing inside of weeks. And then inside of a couple of months, we work to a settlement with these payers and we see piles and piles and piles of money drop into the pockets of these medical institutions. When the money drops directly into their pocket again, further mitigating any concern, any risk they think they might have, all the money flows straight to them, not us. When the money hits their account, they keep 70 cents on the dollar, we take 30. And then it's done. Now, is it truly done? No, it's not done. The reality is these medical institutions recognize that because we solved the problem for this window of time that we looked at, and we usually look at about 2 years, but we'll go back as far as 5, they know it's going to keep happening. So they re-engage us again and again and again. And this turns into lifetime revenue for you. Now, whether they re-engage us in the form of leasing our software or in the process I just described, they want us to just keep redoing that, that's immaterial. The point is, it creates this opportunity for you again and again and again. Constant revenue. Now, remember as I started this and you guys received all these solicitations talking about this monumental revenue. Let's talk about this revenue, right? Let's talk about how this works. So now, when we work with a medical institution, and let's say we work with just a very, very average, medium-sized medical institution. Let's just say they do $100 million a year. In fact, that's quite small compared to many that we bring on today. Many we bring on today are 500 million, 750 million annually, $1 billion, $2 billion, $5 billion, $10 billion, $15 billion. Yep, we have them all and then some. Let's just talk about $100 million. Since I'm here live chatting with you, let's make the math easy for me. I'm doing it on the spot. On $100 million, what we expect to find, let me just give you our statistics here real quick. We advertise on our website, 10 to 20% identified revenue. Now, what does this mean? Let's just go with 10%. That means for every million that they've been paid, we expect to find at least another $100,000 at 10%. At 20%, another $200,000. You kind of get the math, how it shakes out, right? In fact, our mathematical mean, and I hope you guys all recognize how a mean is generated, right? You have a 5 and a 40 and a this and a that, and you end up with a mean. Right, the average. Our mathematical mean and identified funds is 22%. So again, what that means is for every million they've been paid, I expect that we're going to go in and find another $220,000 that they're owed straight from the insurance companies. Again, we're not engaging in any of this activity on the participants, on the patients. That world's saturated. Right? What did I tell you before? We like to do what nobody else does. Well, I'm not going to throw my hat in the ring where thousands and thousands and thousands of medical institutions, accounts receivable companies, et cetera, are chasing these folks. Saturated market, don't care to participate. Over on this side, nobody does what we do. Are there those that purport to do what we do? They kind of claim that, well, we do A, B, C, and D. We do your rev cycle. We do your contract. We do this. We go after your denials. And oh, by the way, we can look for some underpayments while we're at it. And if you look at their websites, what you'll see is their success rates range from 0.5 to 3.5% identified underpayments. I just told you we average 22%. So again, we have no competition. Nobody focuses on this exclusively, but we as an organization. So again, let's take a look at this. If we come into this $100 million facility, that could be a little rural hospital, it could be a surgical center, it could be anything, right? We're not talking big. I'm not giving you a big example. Let's say we find our average. $100 million facility, our average is $22 million that we're going to find per year. We're going to audit 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, right? That number escalates. Now, we are going to go back when we seek settlement. We're going to go back with our aggregate number to the payer, to the insurer. The insurer is going to kick up a fight and say, well, wait a minute, this contract, for example, most contracts say you can only audit them for a year. Some say 2 years, and a de minimis percentage, a real small percentage, are open-ended. You can audit them forever. Let's just look at the worst case scenario, 1 year. Okay, great. Well, let's just say we're giving them a 2-year number. That's, again, just go with these generics, right? $100 million facility per year, that's $200 million for 2 years, right? We assume we're going to find 22%. That's $22 million times 2 is $44 million. $40 to $44 million we think we're going to find. Let's say we find it and we come back and they say, oh, no. You can only audit 1 year. Okay. But this is money that we found that you should have paid. This is money that we feel we can demonstrate. And even within your contract, it says we can only audit 1 year. Your contract also has fines, sanctions, penalties, right? This is a bad environment we're always in an election cycle, aren't we? The way our political system's set up, it feels like it never ends now. There's always a politician really willing to throw their hat in the game when we look at the crippling nature of insurance, of medical expenses, of drugs, so on and so forth. Both political parties are talking about it all the time. Do you really want a mess? And contractually, you've got hazards, imperilment that you've built into your contract that you now have run afoul of. And the byproduct of that is most often they'll look at the 2-year number and they'll offer us 50, 60% of that. Well, what's 50, 60% of a 2-year number? That's 100 to 120% of the 1-year number. What was the 1-year number? $20 to $22 million. Interesting. Now, again, how do we get paid? I already told you guys that. We keep 30% of what we get back. So if we get somebody back $20 million, 30% of that is $6 million to us. $6 million for one small contract. And what do we pay you? Well, currently, and we run different incentives and different programs. You're going to see this adjust over time. Currently, we pay you 30% of that. So again, guys, what's 30% of $6 million? That's $1.8 million. So when we talk about the solicitations, when we talk about the communication you receive, when we talk about all the hype that got you on this call, was it worth it? Was $1.8 million worth a couple minutes of your time to go see what relationships you have? And if you don't have them, to leverage our content to get your foot in the door, to queue up a phone call so we could do everything I just described? Is $1.8 million worth an hour or two of your time? I think we know the answer to that, don't we? Or you wouldn't be here. That's a little case. So again, well, guys, when we start talking about $100,000 per transaction, $1 million, $10 million, even more, you see how attainable these numbers truly are. And you see, I hope you see, the desperate nature that the industry's in. And what a unique moment in time when we talk about a gold rush. There's never been a gold rush like this. You can go back to the 1800s, go back to the California gold rush, go back to the Klondike. Again, if only I could speak. Go back to the Klondike up in Alaska. You go back to the Silicon Valley gold rush. You go to the Boomer gold rush. Go back to all of these monumental, right, gold rushes that have occurred over time. You're talking about millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, even billions of dollars. This is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. The submissions we have right now, those that you just keep sending in, we're sitting on over $6.5 trillion of inbound cases, inbound opportunities to work right now. We haven't even scratched the surface. That's what you're here for. That's why you're on this call. That's why we're reaching out to you. That's why we invited you here, because we haven't scratched the surface at $6.5 trillion of opportunity sitting right here of 1 year revenue. And again, what do we audit? Oh, that's right, 2 to 5 years. That's why we're reaching out to you. That's why you're here. You have the opportunity to participate in a desperate market for which there is viral and desperate need before our medical system collapses. And we're the only ones that can do anything about it. And they all know that. And that's why our close rates exceed 90%. So again, guys, if you're on a call, I'm thrilled to have you here. I love looking at the chat, all the excitement, right? It's what gets me going. It's what gets me excited. And by God, I'm excited. This is incredible. So you see, again, right below me on the screen, this is your chance to participate. Come on in, click through, take a look at what we have to offer, get yourself set up, and let us blow your minds, not with just this. We have all sorts of tools, all sorts of opportunities for each and every one of you. Can't wait to work with you. Can't wait to chat with you. Can't wait to spend our time, our money with you, just like we do with these clients, to show you how you're going to be successful, to do the heavy lifting for you and with you, to change your life, your lives, the lives of your family, generational wealth, and impart an impact that so desperately needs to happen here in America. I want to thank each and every one of you for being on the call. I want to thank each and every one of you that invited you guys to be on the call. So excited to work with you. So excited to continue owning and growing this market space and doing what is so desperately needed for you, for us, and for our country. Thank you all very much. We'll talk to you soon.